The ticket printer will not stop. Amara Boateng's hands do not stop either. Sear. Flip. Plate. Next. Her whites are soaked through at the collar, her braids knotted into a bun that stopped being neat 2 hours ago, and somewhere behind her the executive chef is screaming about a scallop that came out translucent. She does not turn around. She has learned in 11 months at this restaurant that turning around costs 3 seconds, and 3 seconds is a burnt pan. Then the sound outside the kitchen changes, not louder, quieter. The dining room, which has been a wall of 40 covers worth of noise all night, goes still in a way that travels backward through the building like a pressure drop before a storm. The maitre d' stops talking mid-sentence. A waiter freezes with a tray tilted at an angle that should have dropped it. And then the swinging doors to the kitchen open, and they do not swing back. 6 men walk in first, dressed like they are attending a funeral for someone they killed. Then him. He is not tall in a way that announces itself. He is tall in a way that rearranges a room without trying. He walks past the host's stand, past the line cooks who have all, without discussing it, gone completely silent, past the executive chef, who has never lowered his voice in this kitchen in living memory, and does not raise it now either, and stops at her station. Close enough that she can smell his cologne over the char. "You cook like you're angry at the food," Han Seojin says. "I'm angry at everyone tonight." "Good." He reaches down, picks up her paring knife off the cutting board, turns it once so the light catches the edge and sets it back exactly where it was, handle facing her. Mary angry. He is gone before she can find the correct number of things to say to that. Hey besties, kindly like this video and subscribe to this channel so you don't miss out. Let's continue the story. You don't want to miss what happens next. The kitchen exhales as one organism. The executive chef finds his voice again, louder than before, as if volume can erase what everyone just watched. But nobody is looking at him. They are looking at her at the space where he stood, at the small folded card he left on the edge of her station that she has not yet let herself pick up. She picks it up during her 5-minute break in the walk-in, where the cold makes her breath visible and nobody can see her face doing something complicated. It has an address, a date, nothing else. She already knows what it is. She signed the paperwork 6 weeks ago, in a lawyer's office that smelled like leather and old money, across from a man she had met exactly once before that, for exactly 40 minutes, to discuss a marriage that would clear her mother's hospital debt in Accra and give her, in exchange, nothing more complicated than her signature and her silence. She had told herself it was a business arrangement between two people who would barely see each other. She had told herself a lot of things. She had not told herself that he would come to find her mid-service, in front of 40 covers, like he was staking a claim in front of witnesses. That night, riding the last train home with flour still under her fingernails, she thinks about the way he said "Mary angry," like it was an instruction rather than a joke, and she does not have an answer for why her stomach does something unprofessional every time she replays it. 2 weeks later, the wedding happens in a private hall with 14 guests, none of whom are hers except a cousin flown in from London who spends the whole ceremony looking at the size of the flower arrangements like they personally offend her. Amara wears white because it was expected and stands beside a man she has now met 4 times, and when he slides the ring on he holds her hand a half-second longer than the photo requires and says, quiet enough that only she catches it, "You did not ask what I do. You told me. Investments. I told you a category, not the business. Should I be worried? You should be paid," he says, and lets go of her hand before she can decide if that was a warning or a joke. She moves into his residence, a top-floor apartment with a view of the Han River that costs more per month than her mother's entire medical bill, and continues going to work every single day because the arrangement was explicit about that too. She keeps her life. He keeps his. They are furniture that happens to share an address. For 3 months, that is exactly what it is. He is gone more nights than he is home. When he is home, he is polite in the specific way of someone performing politeness rather than feeling it, and she tells herself she prefers it that way. Because whatever softness lives underneath a man who left his lieutenant's cards face down on a poker table, stacked higher than her yearly salary, is not a softness she is equipped to survive. She does not ask what the lieutenants are for. She does not ask why there are always 2 cars outside her building even when he is not in the country. She keeps her head down and her knife sharp, the same way she has kept her head down through every kitchen that underestimated her. And if some nights she catches herself waiting up past midnight just to hear his key in the door, she does not examine that particular fact too closely. The evening everything changes starts like any other Friday. Service is at its ugliest hour, the 7:30 wall, when every table orders at once and the past turns into triage. Amara is on her 3rd ticket rail, wrist deep in a beurre blanc that is one distracted second from breaking, when the kitchen service entrance door slams open hard enough to bounce off the wall. A man she recognizes, Siajan's second, the quiet one who drives when Siajan doesn't want to be seen driving himself, stumbles through it. He is not bleeding from anywhere visible. He is coughing, and what comes up is not the color it should be, and his skin has gone the gray of old dishwater. "Him out of my kitchen," the executive chef roars, already moving toward the pass phone to call it in as an incident, already thinking about liability and health codes, and the review this will get on some app. Amara is already moving the other way. She has spent 11 months clocking every door in this building without meaning to. The way you memorize an exit when you've spent enough of your life in rooms you didn't fully choose to be in. And she reaches the private dining room half a step ahead of the 2 men now half carrying, half dragging the second between them. Siajan arrives 90 seconds later, and the temperature of the room changes when he walks in the same way it did the first night. He takes one look at his second's face and says a single word to the men flanking him, and one of them peels off toward the door to make sure nobody else comes through it ever until he says otherwise. "Hospital," Amara says, already reaching for her phone. No. He does not raise his voice. He has never once raised his voice around her, and somehow that is more frightening than if he had. "If this is who I think it is." A hospital will run a tox screen, and the tox screen will run straight into a police report, and the police report will run straight into a war I am not ready to start on someone else's timeline. Needs an actual doctor, not whatever you think I can do in a restaurant kitchen. You have a chemistry degree you never finished using. You forage. You built a tasting menu last spring entirely out of things you identified growing wild in Buckhanson, because you didn't trust the supplier's foraged mushrooms. He says this like it is a resume he memorized before he ever proposed, and something cold slides down the back of her neck at the realization that he did. I am not asking you because you are my wife. I am asking you because you are the only person within 20 minutes who might actually know what this is. His second is convulsing lightly now, sweat soaking through his collar, pupils blown wide in a way that does not match the restaurant's low lighting. "I trust you," Siajan says, and it lands with more weight than the vows did. She kneels beside the second and does the only thing she knows how to do under pressure, which is exactly what she does at a stove. Stop feeling and start diagnosing. The convulsions, the pupils, the specific gray undertone of his skin, the way his breathing has gone shallow and fast instead of labored. She runs through every plant toxin she has ever studied for a menu, every synthetic compound she memorized during the pre-med year she walked away from, and lands on something that makes her blood go cold in a different way than fear. "This isn't street poison," she says. This is someone who knew exactly what they were doing. It's slow acting on purpose. Whoever did this wanted him alive long enough to be found, to send a message, and to die somewhere that would embarrass you. Siajan's jaw does something controlled and terrible. Can you stop it? I don't know yet. I need the pantry, all of it. And I need everyone who isn't holding him still to get out of my way. The next 40 minutes happen in a blur she will replay for the rest of her life in fragments rather than a full memory. High-proof cooking alcohol as an improvised antiseptic, and later, as part of a crude flush. Activated charcoal from the kitchen's own baking stock, ground finer than it should ever need to be, because charcoal binds toxins and she has exactly one shot at buying time. A tincture built from ingredients she has spent a year quietly foraging and drying for tasting menus nobody, but her ever knew were half medicinal, kept in unlabeled jars in the dry storage, because the executive chef would have thrown them out as clutter. Siajan does not leave the room once. He holds his second's shoulders down through the worst of it, and twice she catches him watching her hands instead of watching the man dying under them, like he is recalculating something about her in real time. By the time the second's breathing evens out into something survivable, it is past midnight. The restaurant has been closed for 2 hours under the story that a gas leak forced an emergency evacuation, and Amara's hands, for the first time in 11 months of professional composure, will not stop shaking. She realizes, 3 hours later, lying awake beside a husband who has finally stopped being furniture, that she orchestrated that gas leak herself, mid-crisis, without once stopping to ask permission, triggering the kitchen's emergency systems, calmly informing the fire department it had started near the executive chef's negligent handling of a gas line he'd been warned about twice, watching him get walked out in cuffs for a health code violation that will end a 20-year career. And she did it without hesitation, without guilt, with the same cold efficiency she brings to a beurre blanc. She does not recognize the version of herself that did that. She is not sure she dislikes her either. The next morning, Siajan is sitting at the kitchen island when she wakes, which has never once happened in 3 months of marriage. There is coffee already made, in the exact way she takes it, which she never told him. He's stable, he says before she can ask. The doctor I finally allowed near him says another hour and it would have been a different conversation. Did it? That is not a question I am going to answer over coffee. I saved his life. I think I've earned a question. Something shifts across his face, not softness exactly, but its cousin. The Asen Syndicate is testing whether I've gotten comfortable, whether 3 years of quiet means I've gone soft enough to bleed. Have you? I don't know anymore, he says, looking at her the way you look at a fire you built and can no longer control the size of. You were not supposed to be good at this. At what? Cooking or the other thing? Both. Either. I married you for a debt and a name and a favor to your mother's doctor, who happens to owe me considerably more than I owe him. I did not marry you expecting to need you. It should feel like an accusation. It feels, instead, like the first true thing he has said to her since the paperwork. 2 days later, the rival syndicate that poisoned his second sends a second message, cruder, faster, meant to be noticed. 3 men breached the restaurant during a private event Siajan arranged specifically so Amara would be there, in the kitchen, where they clearly expected to find her alone and unguarded, because word has already traveled about the woman who saved a man half the underworld thought was already dead. She does not scream, she does not freeze. She grabs the vat of frying oil that has been sitting at 375 degrees since the appetizer course, and throws it in a wide, blistering arc across the first man through the door, buying Siajan, who arrives 11 seconds later, weapon already drawn, because he has had a man stationed within earshot of her at all times for 2 weeks without telling her. Exactly the window he needs to end it before it becomes a story anyone survives to tell. Afterward, standing in a kitchen that smells of burnt oil and cordite, covered in soot and flour and someone else's blood that isn't hers, he looks at her the way he has never once looked at anyone in front of his men. "You were never the wife I bought," he says. "You are the one I should have asked. You should have asked. Would you have said yes?" She looks at the ruined kitchen, the only life she built entirely for herself, the one thing that was never a transaction, and understands with the particular clarity that only follows near death, that she cannot go back to being someone who only survives things instead of choosing them. She unties her apron. It has been through 3 services, 1 poisoning and a small structure fire, and it drops onto the ruined floor like something being buried on purpose. "Ask me now," she says. He does not ask with words. He takes her hand, the same hand he held a half-second too long at their wedding, and walks her out through the back door, past his men, past the wreckage, into a car that will take them somewhere she has never been and cannot yet name. Behind them, the restaurant burns quietly under the fire department's hoses, taking with it the last version of Amara Boateng, who thought she had only married his money. She had married his war instead. She is only now starting to understand that she might have wanted to. 3 weeks later, she stands in a kitchen that is hers in a way the last one never was, private, unmarked, built into the lower floor of a house she still hasn't memorized every hallway of. There is no ticket printer here, no executive chef timing her plating with a stopwatch in contempt. Just knives she chose herself, arranged the way she likes them, and a silence that used to unsettle her and now feels like the first honest thing she's been given. Siajan finds her there most nights now, not because he's checking on her, but because he has started, without announcing it, to simply exist in rooms she is in. He sits at the counter while she cooks for no one but the 2 of them, and some nights he talks about the parts of his world he used to keep locked away from her. Not everything, not yet, but enough that she understands this is a man slowly deciding she is not someone to be managed but someone to be let in. Asen's situation is handled, he tells her one evening, watching her plate something she didn't have to make and made anyway. Quietly, permanently. Define permanently. Define whether you actually want the answer. She considers it the old version of her would have wanted deniability, the comfort of not knowing. The woman standing in this kitchen, apron stained, hands steady, does not flinch from the question the way she once might have. "I don't need the details. I need to know I'm not going to open a door one day and find out the hard way." "You won't." He says it the way he says everything that matters, quiet, absolute, no room left for doubt. "You handled a war in a kitchen with a vat of frying oil and a chemistry degree you were told to abandon. I am not foolish enough to keep you in the dark about the world you already proved you belong in." She sets the plate down between them instead of serving it to him. A small, deliberate correction, not wife performing service, not employee proving worth, just 2 people eating from the same food she made because she wanted to, not because a contract said she had to. He notices. He always notices. "I didn't marry the wife I expected," he says again, softer this time, without the astonishment that colored it the first time he said it. "I got the one I needed instead." "Careful," she says. "Keep talking like that and I might start believing this was never a transaction. It stopped being one the night you saved a man's life with baking charcoal and refused to ask my permission first. Outside, the city keeps its secrets the way it always has: quiet cars, quiet men, quiet arrangements made in rooms no one outside them will ever see. But inside this kitchen, for the first time since a lawyer's office and a signature that was supposed to mean nothing, Amara Boateng is not surviving a life she didn't choose. She built this one, and she is not giving it back. A month into the new house, She learns the first real rule of his world by accident. She is testing a knife set that arrived unannounced, a gift, she assumes, until she notices the maker's mark and realizes it costs more than her old apartment's rent for a year. When one of his men, a broad, silent fixture named Duyun, who has apparently been assigned to keep an eye on the kitchen, clears his throat from the doorway. "You should not hold it like that near him," he says, nodding towards Siajan, who is on a call in the next room, back turned. "Like what?" "I'm slicing an onion." You are pointing a blade in his direction while frowning. In this house that reads as a message. It's an onion, Duyun. I am aware. He is not always the one who walks in first. She starts laughing before she can stop herself, and later that night tells Siajan the story, expecting him to dismiss it. Instead, he goes very still, considers it with the seriousness of a man reviewing a security report, and says, "He's not wrong. Old habits. Knife-adjacent people make everyone nervous here." "You married a knife-adjacent person." "I married the most dangerous woman in this house, and everyone finally knows it." She throws a dish towel at him. He catches it without looking. The following week, she discovers the second rule when she tries to fire one of the household staff for reorganizing her spice drawer without asking. Siajan intervenes not to protect the staff member, but to explain, with the patience of a man who has clearly had this conversation before, that in his world you do not fire people who report directly to his second. You simply mention it once, and the problem resolves itself within the hour, quietly, permanently, and without her ever needing to know how. The spice drawer is back to her exact specifications by dinner. She does not ask what "resolves itself" meant. She is learning which questions to leave alone, and which ones to keep for the nights he actually wants to answer them. Those nights come more often than she expected. 2 weeks later, over a dinner she made from nothing but pantry scraps because she refused to let a chef's instincts go soft just because she no longer needs the income, he tells her, unprompted, between bites, like it costs him nothing though she knows better, about the year he took over from his father. About a man who taught him that softness gets people killed and spent so long drilling that lesson, and that Siajan forgot, somewhere in his 20s, that the opposite was also true, that hardness, unchecked, gets people killed just as efficiently, only slower and lonelier. "The first person in this house who's ever pointed a knife at me and made me laugh instead of reach for a weapon," he says. Low bar. The lowest. You'd be surprised how few people clear it. She reaches across the table and steals a piece of food off his plate instead of her own. A small domestic theft that would have been unthinkable 11 months ago between two strangers signing paperwork. And he lets her, watching her do it with an expression he has stopped trying to hide from her. The third rule she learns the hard way, on a night that starts as nothing. A car she doesn't recognize idles too long outside the house. Duyun notices before she does, and within 90 seconds the calm domestic evening rearranges itself into something else entirely. Men positioned at windows, Siajan's phone against his ear in low, clipped Korean she can only half follow, the specific quiet that has come to mean something is wrong before anyone says so out loud. "Kitchen," he tells her, not a request. "Lock it. Don't open it for anyone but Duyun or me." She goes, because she has learned there is a time to argue and this is not it, but she does not sit still once the door is locked. She pulls out the same jars she used the night she saved his second's life, lines them along the counter without being asked, because if this house is under some kind of threat tonight, she intends to be useful rather than hidden. It turns out to be nothing. Arrival scout testing response times, gone within the hour, the car peeling off before anyone even had to draw a weapon. But when Siajan finds her afterward, unlocking the kitchen himself, he finds her standing at the counter with a full triage station set up and ready, calm as if she'd been expecting to need it. He looks at the jars, then at her. Something in his face does the thing it did the night of the poisoning, recalculating again how much he underestimated her at the very start. You set up a pharmacy in 12 minutes. You told me to lock the door. You didn't tell me to be useless while I waited. I'm never going to win an argument with you again, am I? No, she says, capping a jar. But you'll get very good meals out of losing. He laughs, a real one, short and surprised out of him, the kind she has learned he only produces maybe once a week and guards the rest of the time like currency. He crosses the kitchen, takes the jar out of her hands, sets it down, and kisses her the way he has started to lately, unhurried like a man who has stopped needing to prove anything to anyone in this house, including her. The record, he says against her hair, Dune still thinks you're dangerous. Dune is correct. I know. It's my favorite thing about you. Outside, the city carries on the way it always does, quiet cars, quiet men, a war that never fully sleeps even when it looks like it has. But in this kitchen, in this house, in a marriage that started as a transaction and became something neither of them has a clean word for yet, Amara Boateng stands beside the most dangerous man in the city, unafraid, unmanaged, and entirely, finally home.